So I know I've been saying this a lot lately on the Speaking for Him podcast, but I have yet another great movie review to share with you today. So welcome to the show. If this is your first time here, my name is Andrew Gomison, and I'm privileged to be your host each and every week for the Speaking for Him podcast. It is a weekly dose of encouragement for those who are on the journey of the Christian life, and I hope that you enjoy it. This podcast is designed because the Christian life is indeed a journey and it is a marathon and not a sprint, and we need each other. So I hope that if you are new here, that you will check out my contact information at the end of the show and make your voice heard. Let me know what you think of the show. How can I improve it? What do you want to hear in the future? I want to know all those things. But I try to do a variety of things to meet a variety of different needs on this show. And one of my favorite things to do is movie reviews. And every once in a while, there is a good number of movies that I want to review in a very short period of time. And that's kind of what we're going through here on the podcast. That's something I think to be very thankful for. And so I am going to embrace it. And again, I'm excited to share with you my review of the movie, The Sheep Detectives. And I thought this movie looked cute and fun in the theaters, like a quality family film, and my expectations were actually exceeded when I went and watched it. So again, I'm very excited to share what I've learned about this film and to encourage you to go and watch it with your family. And if you're listening to this after it's in theaters, which may very well be the case because of my scheduling, then I would encourage you to stream it and share it with your family in your living room. We need to encourage Hollywood studios to make movies like this. One of the most surprising things to me about this film is that it comes from Amazon Studios. So I'm just very gratified that they made this movie. And I think that there's something here for adults and kids alike. And that to me is an exciting thing. But before we dig into the meat of our discussion of the review, let me share with you our quote of the day. And you know that if you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, typically when I do a quote of the day, I read you a quote from the film and I discuss it. I'm doing something a little different here, and I'm going to allow the movie to share with you the quote of the day because it's a conversation. And I think it's an interesting and kind of important conversation. So I will let the sheep detectives speak for themselves.
What is this?
This is the church where someone named God lives.
Who's God?
It's a bit confusing. God is a shepherd.
So he could be our shepherd?
No, because he's also a lamb.
What?
And he's also invisible. And he's made of bread. And he damns things.
Damn things. Like a beaver?
Yes.
So God is a big invisible lamb beaver made of bread?
Yes. And they eat him on Sundays.
Poor God.
Okay, so that is our quote of the day. It is a conversation that the sheep have when they are going past a church in the little town that this movie is based in. And I think the situation is that it's an Anglican church. You'll notice at the end of that clip, they make a mention of transubstantiation, which, let me be clear, I do not believe in. I believe that Jesus died once for all, so communion is a symbol. But I just thought it was a very interesting discussion that these sheep were having. And they actually said some very neat, true things about God. God is our shepherd. Jesus is known as the Good Shepherd. He's also known as the Lamb of God and the bread of life. And all of these things indirectly come out of this quote. And so I really think that that was a good way to begin this review. And if nothing else, I feel like this scene is a good discussion starter to talk to your kids about what is important in life. And the fact that it's in a children's movie from a Hollywood studio, Amazon nonetheless, and was handled in, well, it may be a lighthearted way, a respectful way. I really liked that. And so I hope that gives you something to think about as we jump into the meat of our review. So without further ado, here are my thoughts on the movie The Sheep Detectives. So the first thing that leaps out about this movie is the ensemble cast. Every once in a while, there's a movie that comes out, and you just get the feeling that a bunch of classic actors that we're all used to seeing on screen decide, hey, this looks like a cute project. Let's all do it together. And I don't know if they are friends and they just call each other up and say, hey, you should do this movie with me, or if they just all get the script from their agent and decide that it's a good idea. But it's just really interesting to me how this cast came together. You have Bryan Cranston and Patrick Stewart, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus is kind of the lead sheep. She's the lead investigator sheep of the Sheep Detectives. And there's several other fairly big name voices too. So I just really appreciated that the sheep ensemble was very solidly represented in the voice cast. I still remember when there was a transition from voice actors and live screen actors to live screen actors doing animated films. The first person to really do that was Robin Williams, and that really changed things up. Because before that, there used to be people that were basically totally devoted to voice acting and others that were totally devoted to acting live on screen. And then studios decided we can get more people in the seats if familiar voices lend their vocal cords to these specific roles. And so it kind of changed the way we view animation. But I really like the ensemble cast. The ensemble live action cast is really good too. Hugh Jackman is always a delight to watch. And the reason that this movie works and hits a deeper chord than many other cheesy children's movies is that Hugh Jackman takes it seriously. He plays a shepherd and he reads detective stories to his sheep every night. And he likes to pretend that they can understand him, but he's pretty sure they don't because they're just sheep. Little does he know that they actually do. And so when he is killed, they set out to solve his murder. Before we go a little farther into this review and dig into it in depth, let me share with you the theatrical trailer for The Sheep Detectives.
If there's one secret to happiness in my life, it's taking care of the kindest creatures on earth. Sheep. I want you to meet my flock.
When I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be.
I keep them well fed, well groomed, and each day I read out loud to them mysteries, whodunits. I know who the killer was. I like to pretend that they follow along, but they're only sheep.
Ah! Why would he stop there?
He was just about to say who the killer was.
This is torture. It was the maid, right?
When I wake up,
Wake up! Everybody wake up!
We found George on the grass, and he's not moving.
What?
Lily, tell us what to do.
Our shepherd was murdered. And we shall solve the crime. George George was visited by someone he knew well enough to offer a drink.
Not much of a story for you, I'm afraid.
Unless there's anything out the ordinary.
The policeman is completely hopeless. We need to help him.
You think you're brave enough to leave home?
We're not scared.
What is that?
I think it's a road.
But what is it made of?
Well, not grass, I can tell you that.
Are you coming?
For George?
For George. Officer Derry, I am George Hardy's lawyer. He wrote a will. In the nighttime stories, the people in the will are always the suspects.
That man had nothing.
Well, actually, there is $30 million. And we have our motive. We need to look for clues.
Stand back.
I am, after all, a sheep detective.
You killed George. What are they hiding?
What if I can't solve it?
I've read you dozens of these stories. They follow very simple rules.
Look, the clue.
Every time something happens with this case,
That's my hat.
there they are. A clue. Thank you all.
Sheep can do things. In fact, we can do anything.
I want to bash it! I want to bash it so bad!
What's with them?
Guys, I may be inside a clue. Ow!
So George Hardy is a shepherd who raises his sheep for wool, and he's presented in this film as a very gentle man who keeps to himself. We find out through the course of the film that he has 2 children, but that he's not close to them, at least his daughter. I guess we don't know exactly what the evolution of his relationship with his son is, but we know that he's not close to his daughter because he had to put her up for adoption because he was in debt. And it seems from the way the story unfolded that that was kind of a forced situation between him and the church, and the pastor admits to not being a very good shepherd because he allowed that to go on. So this is the setup for the story. And we see him writing a letter in the beginning part of the film. And we realize as the film goes on that he's writing to his estranged daughter and he's inviting her to come see his flock. And my understanding is that she is from the US and he is in the UK. So it's quite a trip, but he encourages her to make the trip. So we see early on some people that may have had beef with Mr. Hardy, George Hardy. And so it's really setting up for you when he does pass away, who is going to end up being the killer. Of course, when you watch these things, you know they have to show you a number of suspects and give you a plausible reason why any of them could be the suspect. And I really like the fact that this film is able to set up a murder mystery and make it believable, make you buy into what's going on screen without being gratuitous and overly scary. I will say that there are a couple kind of scary scenes for exceptionally younger listeners, but I think this is okay for family viewing, and I would definitely encourage people to go and watch it without too much worry about the content. As I said earlier when I was talking about the quote of the day, I was very heartened by the respectable way that they talked about God, and I really believe that that's a good discussion starter. So, what did I particularly like about this film? I liked the fact that they took great care to cast it well and that the people who were in the film bought into the project. I feel like they made sure to give 110% to their acting in this movie. It could be very easy to kind of phone it in because it's a children's movie, but by delivering solid acting jobs, despite the fact that it has a children's vibe, you actually give it more credibility. It reminds me a little bit of the Muppet Christmas Carol. The Muppet Christmas Carol could have ended up very campy and just a fun children's romp, but instead, Michael Caine said, I'm going to play this role of Ebenezer Scrooge extremely serious, and I'm going to treat the Muppets as if instead of being puppets, they are actual actors. And because of that, The Muppets Christmas Carol ranks in my top 5 Christmas Carol movies of all time and ranks very high on many people's lists of the best Christmas Carol movies of all time because it was taken seriously. So the first thing that I really like about this film is that it was taken seriously. The second thing that I really like about this film is that the scenery is great. And it's amazing when I was watching some behind the scenes footage how realistic they animated the sheep. When most of the movie, Hugh Jackman is either looking at cameras or he is dealing with puppets. And yet, somehow, in the post production animation process, they made them look like very realistic sheep. It's also kind of interesting that they kept them acting like sheep. They weren't able to do things that a real sheep wouldn't be able to do. They didn't get up on 2 legs and they didn't talk to the humans. They talked to each other, but to the humans, they were just sheep. But eventually, through some humorous means, the humans begin to suspect that the sheep are helping them solve a crime. So I think there's a lot to like here. I think that families are going to enjoy it. And I think it's going to be the kind of film that's watchable over and over again. What didn't I like about this film? Well, there's not a whole lot not to like. I thought it was very well done. But I think that one thing that I would have liked them to add in this film is to show a little bit more background on the person who actually was the killer so that you could buy into the angst that he had. I understand wanting to keep it a secret, especially since it's a murder mystery, and for obvious reasons, I'm not going to tell you who it is. But I did wish we had known a little bit more about him and understood a little bit more about why he might have wanted to be the guy to end this shepherd's life. I also would have liked to see him interact a little bit more with the townspeople. Again, I know that being a loner was part of his deal, and I think that's part of what they were trying to accomplish by making him this way is to see that a lot of people could have things against him because of the fact that he was a loner, but I would have liked to see more interaction, I think, with him and the townspeople just to see a little bit more of why they might have wanted to be done with him. But again, really not a whole lot of objectionable content. Of course, it's always possible that I may have missed something. So if you go and watch it and you feel the need to point out something to me, I would really appreciate your feedback on the film. And if I have your permission and you want to share a voicemail that I can share on a future episode of the podcast about the Sheep Detectives, I would definitely be open to that. So you can send me a voicemail on my blog at speaking4him.blogspot.com. That's speaking the number for him.blogspot.com. And that will be repeated again at the end of the show. So please avail yourself of that or any other method to contact me. I really appreciate hearing any and all feedback from each and every one of you who is listening. I want to continue to produce a very well done podcast that can encourage you in your faith, but also just be very high quality broadcasting. It's very important to me. So, as we continue through this review, the next aspect that I would like to discuss is what do you think are the biggest lessons from this film? Well, one thing that I really liked about this film, and I guess it's another aspect where the film goes deeper than you expect, is that there's a prevailing belief among the sheep that sheep become clouds when they die. But then when Lily the sheep in particular sees that her shepherd has died, she is faced with the reality of death, and she doesn't quite know how to process it. And then when one of the herd dies, she has to face the extreme reality that sheep, in fact, do die and they don't just turn into clouds. Again, they don't really discuss what that means on a grand scale. Uh, the sheep that does die, I think, makes an allusion to seeing his shepherd in eternity. So that's kind of an interesting outlook. But again, I think that makes it a exciting discussion starter for when you discuss this movie with your kids after you watch it to say, what does death mean? What does it mean to prepare for life after death? Because this is something that we all have to face. And the most important decision that you and I can make while we are still alive and kicking here on earth is what will we do with Jesus Christ? Because the Bible says it is appointed unto man once to die, and after this, the judgment. That is Hebrews 9:27. And so it's very important for us to know what we believe and to have confidence in what we believe. So, again, another scene that can spark great discussions. I think another neat thing that we see in the film is the cooperation and the camaraderie and the love between the sheep for one another. I know they're just sheep and there's a lot of humor in it, but I think it's very exciting to see their flock portrayed as a true community and how they band together to find the killer of their shepherd. That's an exciting thing. And also how they learn to deal with prejudice because most of them are summer lambs and there's a winter lamb that their shepherd intends to include in the flock, but the sheep aren't too enthusiastic about it. But then he ends up being somewhat of a hero in the movie. So it even deals with the topic of prejudice. So there's just a lot here that is worth watching and sharing with your friends and your family, and especially your children. Like, use discretion with super young children, but there's really nothing objectionable for children of any age as long as they are accompanied by an adult who is ready to have important discussions with them at the conclusion of the movie. And I think that's one of the most exciting things for me is I didn't know exactly what to expect going in, but it was definitely a lot deeper than I thought it was going to be. And I give the writers and the producers of this film a lot of credit for making this film and for making it as thought provoking as they did. Because, like I said, any group of people who worked on this film could have taken the approach of basically phoning it in and saying it doesn't have to be that great because it's a children's movie. But I truly believe that the makers of this film set out to make a good film. And as a result, you're really going to enjoy what you see when you go into theaters or when you rent this movie on streaming if it's no longer in theaters by the time you're hearing this podcast. And I think it's so important for us to support these movies. You know, I talk about that in terms of supporting the movies that are overtly Christian, because I want Christian movie makers to continue to be able to make films. So I want their films to be able to make money. I want them to get theatrical releases and access so that more people can see them. But I think it's very exciting when a secular movie studio does a film that is this high of quality and speaks with such depth about important issues. And so I wholeheartedly recommend this film. I'm going to give it a solid 4 out of 5 stars. And again, I encourage you to go and watch it at your earliest convenience with your family. I think you're really going to enjoy it, and I think it will be a blessing to your family. And as I said, I think it will start some important discussions. And I think that's an important thing that a lot of our entertainment today does not do, because things can be entertaining and there's nothing wrong with enjoying entertainment. But I believe that entertainment is only solid if it is thought provoking. And so that's the type of entertainment that I want to promote here on the Speaking for Him podcast. Well, that's what I have to share with you for today's episode of the podcast. Again, I hope that if you enjoyed this podcast, you'll share it with your family and friends. Maybe pick 3 to 5 people who have never heard Speaking for Him content before, and let them know when and how to listen to the Speaking for Him podcast each and every Wednesday. I would be truly grateful if you would do that. You can also share your own comments, questions, or concerns with the contact information that I have to share at the end of the show. And as I said, your voicemails would be particularly helpful because I would love to share other people's opinions and thoughts on this show. But I can only share them if you share them with me. So again, thank you so much for listening. And with all of this being said, I hope that you have a great week and that, as always, you keep serving the best of masters.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Your host has been Andrew Gomison, founder of Speaking for Him. For information on today's show and to leave us comments and voicemails, please visit Speaking4Him. That is speaking numeral 4 him.blogspot.com. You can find Andrew's ministry at speaking4him.com. That's speaking the number 4 HIM.com. And when you look for us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or all other major podcast platforms, let us know what you think of the podcast by leaving a rating and a review. Intro music for this podcast is provided by Audio Kraken. Transition music is provided by Superstate. Both of these tracks are available free of charge from pond5.com, pond5.com.